What is the biggest oh frick, I'm dead thing you've done at work, but nobody ever found out? I used to work for a big box pet store taking care of the animals that lived in the store. There was a rotation of the animals getting their accessories changed out and cleaned. That is, water bottles, food bowls, plastic huts, every day. So each day the morning person cleaned that day's habitats and the closer did the dishes in the sink and set them to dry and be put back in rotation for use. It was sometimes difficult to complete any of these tasks while also dealing with customers. The sink we did dishes in was very deep and company policy stated that the dishes had to soak in a cleaning solution for a certain amount of time, so it took a long time to fill up the sink with the solution to soak everything. It was common to turn the water on to fill up the sink and go see if anyone needed help in the store while you waited. Not long after I started working there, I was performing this task and got pulled into a long conversation with a customer. Normally I'd duck in the back and turn off the faucet if I thought the conversation would take a while. But this night I just completely forgot the sink was on. Cue like 20 minutes later walking in the back to ankle deep water. The sink had overflowed and was filling the back space. The door had a rubber stopper at the bottom keeping it from going into the store. I took a squeegee thing and started herding the water into a drain on the floor on the backside of the fish wall, but it took a long time. I was so frantic and still had to pay attention to customers out on the floor. Luckily no one else ever went into the back unless you worked in that department, and I was working alone. So I managed to herd most of the water into the fish drain and the rest dried overnight before the opener came in. No one ever knew I flooded the back space. Few months later I realized flooding was a common occurrence and my manager flooded it at least once a year. LOL. Herding water. I auto-archived 2,500 records from our database with one button push. This removed them from active status and cancelled any associated reservations and services. I had to click into each record and reinstate it. Took me 6 hours. I admitted my folly at the next team meeting to ensure no one else had to go through the sheer butt-puckering terror I did when those records disappeared. We call it the doom button now. Why there is a doom button I have no idea. When I was 18 I worked for Menards, like Home Depot. It was a small store with an outside yard that you couldn't drive into, so we would pick what you wanted with a forklift and load the customers out in the parking lot. So this lady came in to pick up a bunch of special order bricks. I loaded 2 pallets of bricks into the back of her very nice new truck. She signed the paperwork and the transaction was done. Until I sat in the forklift filling out my part of the paperwork and she backed into a forklift tine and punched it all the way through her tailgate. I was 100% in the wrong, as anyone who has ever driven a forklift knows that unless you are actively using the lift, you keep the tines on the ground if you're parked and a couple inches above while driving. I had seen a guy get fired once for driving over a piece of cardboard instead of stopping to pick it up, so I was beyond screwed. But she just put it in drive and took off. She didn't even look back at me. I expected that she was going to pull up to the front of the store to report it, but she just left. As far as I know she never reported it, and no one ever knew it happened. That was 21 years ago and I think about that incident pretty often. She was probably driving home thinking, oh crap, they have my name. They are going to sue me for damaging their equipment. Don't make eye contact. Just keep driving and never ever come back to this store again. That would have been me. Had a lorry turn up 15 minutes before the end of the day, and in my rush, pure freaking anger to just get him unloaded ASAP so I could go home, I drove through the roller shutter doors as they were still opening and caught them with the top of the mast. I got the guy unloaded and on his way and tried to lock up, hoping to explain it all away the following day. The door was that bent it wouldn't lock. As it wouldn't lock, I couldn't set the alarms. I was essentially trapped at work and now an hour late from leaving. In a moment of pure desperation I lifted the doors again and drove into them from the other side, bending them enough to lock them up, set the alarms and get home. I'd hit them a little too hard, so they were now bent inwards and the bosses assumed someone had reversed into them during the night. The estate we were on was a notorious cruising spot for the local boy races, and there was always tire marks or bits of car scattered round the place, so they got the blame. Had a lorry turn up 15 minutes before the end of the day. Ugh, I feel your pain. Dropped a slab of steel on my toes, couple £100. During my probationary period, But since I was wearing my steel toes, wear your PPE, and no one else was around, I got away with a slightly bruised foot after I wiggled out. Still got let go, but that's because I was a slow welder. Still got let go, but that's because I was a slow welder. Should have hopped to it. Knocked a soldering iron off of its stand while I was working as I was getting up to take a pee. Came back and it had burned a hole dead center in the plastic table my boss just bought. I'm thinking I'd have to pay for a new one, but my boss comes in and sets the box down hard on the table and it knocks the iron over and burns another hole near the old one. Okay, so I'm running a summer camp and halfway through the day I'm comparing our bus attendants to the group attendants and I notice there is a little girl who was marked as being on the bus but not in her group. I go and check the group. No sign of her. Other groups. Nope. No one has seen this 6-year-old girl and we are out in bumblefuck nowhere and I am losing my crap. I have lost a child. We're gonna get so fired and gonna need to call the cops and they're gonna have to search the woods. My life flashes before my eyes. After 15 minutes of oh my god my life is over, my co-worker pulls up with the news that she spoke to the girl's mom and she did not come to camp that day at all. The bus attendance was an error. I was 5 minutes from calling my boss and instead I collapsed in the dirt with relief and tried not to cry. Holy frick. When I was a brand new airline pilot we landed at an airport that required a long taxi back to the terminal. During the taxi the captain made a wrong turn onto a narrow taxiway that led to a small private hangar. As soon as he made the turn we knew it was the wrong taxiway, but it was very narrow with trees on both sides so there was no way to turn around. I had no idea how we were going to deal with this. He thought for a minute, then said, "McGonagall, can you see the tower from here?" I looked. Nope. Good, then they can't see us. With that, he reversed both engines and slowly backed onto the main taxiway. I guess the passengers thought it was normal because no one asked any questions and we never heard anything about it. When I was about 17 I used to internship at a bank through a school program. It was a small business bank so there wasn't any glass like you see at big banks. The setup was 4 desks lined up next to each other with small walls separating them almost cubicle style but shorter. My desk was all the way at the end next to the wall. Anyways, so I'm sitting at my desk bored one day with nothing to do so I grab a paperclip and start flicking it paper football style at the wall separating my desk and the one next to it. Every time it bounced back I would flick it again. Well, one time I flicked it a little too hard and the paperclip flew right over the small wall and hit a customer right in the head that was waiting to be attended. My heart sank and so did my head down to the desk as I tried to go unnoticed in hopes that they won't know who did it. Looking back it was probably obvious that the 16-year-old boy was the one flicking paperclips and not the 40+ old ladies next to him. Luckily I don't think the customer knew what hit her and I was never blamed for it. I'm always kind of zoned out in public, so if that happened to me I'd look around shocked, and if I didn't see the paperclip I'd start wondering if I was hallucinating things. One day everybody was working from home except me so I just left and went to Six Flags with my friend, praying there wouldn't be any spur of the moment video calls. First day as an electrical engineer intern. I blew up a power amplifier by hooking up a power supply incorrectly. I was pulling a lot of current, 2A for a small power amplifier, and sparks and smoke were everywhere. I went to tell the engineer I was working for, fully expecting to be reprimanded or fired, but he didn't seem to care too much, which surprised me. Working at a high-end tour company, I backed a bus hitch into a guest's BMW, broke one of their tail lamps. I picked up all the plastic remnants from the ground and taped a note to their window to find me when they returned from their tour to discuss the damage and go speak to the owner with me about insurance, etc. I'd been breaking down my trip to make way for the next bus arriving, so I hadn't had a chance to go tell my boss before they returned. The guest came and found me, laughing. Said someone had hit it a few weeks prior and it was already being processed through the insurance of the other person who had hit him, and not to worry about it. He hadn't realized that I'd done additional damage because it was the same tail light. Nothing else was damaged and I'd picked up all the broken pieces from the ground, so it didn't look that bad compared to what damage had already existed. I never had to fess up to my boss about the incident and learned to never attempt to park the bus near the fancy cars again. Still, you did the right thing leaving a note. A lot of things were changing, and company growing, blah 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 the usual, and at a certain point, I just got tired of being thrown into something with no direction, so I just made up stuff how I wanted it to go and started referring to it as policy. I've since left that job, but they're still using my policies that I made up half the time on the fly as things happened. Something about the word policy makes it sound so official and well thought out. Gwah. Our Muzak old crap system was out of whack, so since I'm IT, I was tasked to fix it. Stupid proprietary audio files, stupid codecs, stupid hold music. To pass the time, I ripped a Gwah CD that I received as a gag gift a million years ago to the proprietary format and amused myself by throwing meat sandwich on loop for testing. Finally got everything working, called it a night and went home for the rest of the weekend. Monday morning, around 11 AM, I get a call. Hi, Coyote. I think our Muzak system is still broken. People are complaining about the songs and the sound. What? Call my work into question? I tested it myself. I personally made sure the audio format was working with my own music and frick. I left Gwah, meat sandwich, as our only Muzak for hold for our entire company. I ran to the data center, put everything back to default and told them that it was crossing channels or symbols and everything was fine. But we open at 6 AM. So for 5 glorious hours, meat sandwich was the music playing after the soft voiced woman told you to please hold. I never heard of that song and looked it up. Dang, I haven't laughed like that in a while. Spilled soda in our lab near a test system I was working on. They were very expensive. Some soda got to the unit before I was able to stop it. I dried everything thoroughly, but was very scared because I had only been there a year or so and these things were very expensive to produce. But when I left that company 8 years later, that system still was fully functional and in use. I did start listening to the lab rules about no open containers after that though. Lab rules about no open containers. TBF, those are for you so you don't die though. Incidental contamination. A year and a half ago my company hired me back after my internship. They gave me a new role, but no one explained it clearly to me. I wound up doing all this compliance paperwork stuff wrong for months, but no one ever said anything. And now, starting next week, they are trusting me with some of the most important duties in the company. Better hope they teach me better this time. I wound up doing all this compliance paperwork stuff wrong for months, but no one ever said anything. That's because no one else knows how to do it either. It was university. They had this really expensive piece of equipment and I can't remember exactly what it measured or how it worked. What I remember is this. You completed a circuit to power the thing, meaning you plugged a wire into 5 volts or whatever came out of the wall and another wire into the ground and plugged both of them into the device. Alligator clips baby. What you got out of the wall was way too much current, so you had to put a resistor between the wire from the wall and the device. The thing cost something ridiculous like $25k at the time. It was made out of diamonds or gold or something else fricked up. Anyways, I got really peed. My lab partner just took over the experiment and plugged the thing directly into the wall without a resistor. I basically fried the thing in a second. I smelt burning and could see smoke come out of it immediately and knew exactly what I'd done, as I literally thought, oh frick, I'm dead, and started realizing the gravity of my actions. This dude in a huge bus trench coat thing walks by my lab table, gets his coat caught in it and pulls the thing off the table. It lands on the ground and smashes into a million pieces. Dude was walking with the guy who ran the labs, and that dude loses it on him. I just sat in silence. I felt guilty but like I dodged the biggest bullet of my life. I didn't know definitively that I'd broke it, but I knew definitively that that dude had, and I was too much of a coward to say anything. Trenchcoat man was 100% you from the future, come to unfuck your life. I used to work as a warehouse manager for a company that sells expensive measuring instruments and managed to accidentally drop a box with glass lenses worth $1,100 each. Most of them were broken. The box was freshly in, so I took a huge risk by lying that they came in that way and must have gotten damaged during transport. Luckily for me they did believe me. Important rule in every warehouse I've worked so far, it's always transport damage until someone can prove it wrong. It was the night before I was scheduled to have a tense meeting with my boss and a client. The meeting was supposed to be a sort of peace talk because of tension growing between my staff and the client, who was an emotional and difficult person to work with. The night before, my wife and I opened a bottle of wine with dinner and managed to finish it off before bed. This didn't seem like too much at the time, but the next morning I woke up sicker than I have ever been. I still had this difficult meeting, so I got up, got dressed, managed to choke down some Advil and a glass of water. The minute I get on the highway to work, I feel my stomach twisting. There is nothing between where I am now and where my office is except highway with almost no shoulder. Halfway to work I feel that feeling in my throat, like a tightening, and my bowels are starting to make terrible noises. I realize I am going to throw up and look around my car for anything to throw up in. I spot McDonald's bag is on the floor, so I grab it. Hoping I don't need to use it, I speed up trying to get to my exit so I can pull over and rave. No dice. I held the bag up to my mouth going 85 miles per hour and throw up red wine into the McDonald's bag, which had the strength of tissue paper because my hot acid puke punched right through the bag and into my lap. By some miracle I had extra business slacks in my car. I stopped at a gas station and changed in the bathroom. I looked into the mirror and a haggard sallow man with flop sweat and sunken eyes stared back at me. Even with the wardrobe change I smelled faintly of booze and vomit. I went to the meeting and my boss noticed something was up. He rescheduled with the client, telling me, "I don't think you're up to it this morning." I for sure thought he was going to fire me for being a huge drunk, but nothing happened. I don't drink wine anymore. Wine guts is no joke. I climbed in the baler to push a stuck bale out. There's a camera pointed right at the baler, so I thought for sure I was done. But nobody saw me or asked about it. Don't climb in the baler. Other than stealing, that's the only other thing that will get you fired. My whole body clenched reading this. Turns out we were allowed to grab free water from the walk-in fridge, but not Red Bulls. Didn't realize they weren't comped until someone told me I could get in serious trouble for stealing weeks later. This seems like an honest mistake. Parked badly. My mirror scratched my boss's truck. He was a prick, so I never mentioned it and I forgot about it until reading this. When I was working as an intern, there was this hideous guy who called the office and started making insane accusations and demands. I thought I had put him on hold when I called one of my supervisors on another line and said, "There's some crazy frick on the other line demanding to talk to someone in charge," but actually somehow he wasn't on hold. He was listening the whole time. I heard a voice say "what" on the other line and I was like, "Oh frick, I'm dead. LOL. So I picked up the phone and just hung it up, LOL. By some miracle the guy never called back. I told my supervisor that he hung up and that was the end of it. I had similar happen with me. I was calling up overdue accounts, and the lady thought she had me on hold, and proceeded to tell her accounts people that B from is on the phone chasing our overdue account. I gave her a mouthful. Years ago when I worked at a web agency, there were several times where I accidentally took down an entire site. Luckily, I usually realized it right away and fixed the issue. The biggest site I did this to was probably Brunswick Bowling. So that explains why I couldn't get onto Brunswick's site at one time. You scallion. While phoning a customer and trying to explain I needed a key to get into the bay, I accidentally just like fucking instead of like I'm like a normal person. So it was like, "Hey there, calling from company name. Just needed access to this bay and fucking the door is locked, so I need the key." The woman on the phone sounded very ESL, so I got away with it. No complaint. Customer didn't even acknowledge it. Being on the phone and remaining in professional mode is hard. I go into autopilot a lot. On multiple occasions I have ended a work call with "okay, love you, bye," and then hung up. I hear about that later most times, but jokingly. Spilled soil samples from an ecology project I was helping our doctorate student on. I contemplated just putting them back into the containers and playing dumb, but that would have been a crappy thing. So instead, I take our work truck, the soil coring device, and in the middle of the night I go to each area again and retake the cores. The bad thing is some sites are on people's front yards, so here I am, coring yards at 2 AM on a Wednesday in front of a house like some really crappy dirt burglar. One old lady heard me and asked what I was doing in her yard, and thankfully instead of shoot me or let my lab director know what the heck I was doing, she simply told me that everyone makes mistakes in science. Take those scientists trying to tell us the earth is getting too warm. Good luck with your dirt study. You know what, silly old lady? I'll let this one slide. Ignore the fact that we are trying to work out how climate change is interacting with urban ecosystems. You didn't rat on me. Yes, I will enjoy my dirt study. I did not get fired. No one knew what I did except that nice old lady. And now the internet. I contemplated just putting them back into the containers and playing dumb, but that would have been a crappy thing. I like you. Thanks for being a responsible crappy dirt burglar. Long time ago, my first job, in advertising in London, I was sent a gif by my old college roommate of a woman sucking off a horse and throwing up a ton of jizz. Pretty gross. I forwarded it to his GF to encourage him not to send me this crap again. But I didn't just send it to her, I sent it to everyone in my office email list. It included clients, some of them pretty high up and very conservative. I panicked like crazy. Luckily, my art director was dating the CEO's PA and she was really cool. Got the IT guy to delete it from all internal emails, and then sent an email to all the clients telling them there was a virus attached to the email I had sent and to immediately delete it. No one ever saw that horrendous gif. No one on my agency ever knew except my AD and his GF. I for sure would have been toast. This entire thread has impressed me with how bad these frick ups are, and how lucky one human can be, but this is the one that made me go holy crap under my breath. I wrote a check for $350k and gave it to the wrong person. I tracked him down. Not sure what he would have done if I didn't track him down. Depends on who the check was made payable to. If you only handed the check to the wrong person but all other info was correct, it shouldn't have been that bad. Probably, if that person tried to cash it, it'd be denied. If he tried to do some sort of forgery that actually worked, that would be illegal and he'd be made to give the money back once the police investigate it. I work a desk job at a small office. Bosses left for a meeting and wouldn't be back for the rest of the day. I didn't have much to do, so I decided to buy a couple tall cans across the street and watch some Netflix. An hour later, during a quiet part in the show, I heard my boss talking on his phone. Apparently their meeting got cancelled and they'd been back for about 30 minutes. My desk is right outside my boss's office, and somehow he didn't notice anything. He's extremely strict about work and always complains about time wasting, but never said anything to me. I have no idea how I wasn't caught. I have no idea how I wasn't caught. He was watching Netflix in his office. There were some police officers at the reception desk. Not that unusual. Police would show up for a wide range of reasons. I strolled by on the way to my office. They were being attended to, so I didn't need to get involved. 20 minutes later I was strolling past reception again. The police were gone. I popped into the facility manager's office beside the reception desk. We were talking about stuff and I started telling him about this great hashish I had just got my hands on. Maybe I could even get him some. CEO sticks his head in the door and says, "Simpleton, can I see you out here?" I stepped out to see what's up, and he's standing there beside the same two police officers. Oh crap, I think. CEO says, "Simpleton, these officers are here to drop off a donation check for our refugee fund. I was just showing them around the building. Can you take some pictures of us for the website?" Not me, but my destructive co-worker once took a drill to a cell phone battery for the heck of it. Flames started shooting out, so he covered it up with a wastebasket. Luckily it didn't explode, but we did learn the dangers of lithium-ion batteries that day. One time I smashed an old phone I found with a sledgehammer and it started doing that smoking thing. It was night. I ended up bringing it out of my apartment and to the dumpster. I poured water on it. Looked like someone lit a huge smoke of them. A neighbor came out because I was running around and thought I was the guy who had been breaking into cars in the neighborhood recently. Spilled coffee all over my laptop. I told my supervisor that it had stopped working and she assumed it stopped because of how old it was. I got a new, much better laptop out of it. Ah frick, you just reminded me I did the same thing. Except I was drunk and it was a mixed drink. Because I was still drunk. To get the stickiness off, I took it apart, washed the case, and reassembled it. It was my birthday, so I got extremely drunk, naturally, and it was okay because I didn't have work the next day, except I did have work, and when my alarm went off I was incredibly confused and even more scared. Coming to work intoxicated hungover is an automatic you're fired. Well, turns out I'm notorious for my clumsy behavior and under eye circles because nobody even suspected a thing. Sounds like an sick day. If you get canned for showing up intoxicated, not showing up will likely have a lighter punishment, lol. I work at a high volume luxury jewelry boutique. We handle well into the multi-millions of dollars worth of jewels and timepieces every day. When I was moving out of my apartment, I thought it would be smart to save some coin and just take the used boxes from our shipping receiving room. Some of you see where this is obviously headed. I got home from work, dragged the boxes upstairs, and started to pack. 45 minutes into packing my kitchen, I heard a clink on the tile, and didn't think anything of it, just thought to myself that I'd pick whatever just fell up later. I forgot about it entirely and went to bed. Next morning comes around. It's about 6 AM. Too dark to see with just the daylight, and too early for me to want to turn too many lights on. I walk into the kitchen to get some coffee going and stepped right on a 9-carat G flawless diamond ring. I accidentally stole and then stepped on a $1.3 million ring. I figured if could take it without anyone noticing, I could put it back the same way. So I tucked it into my lunch bag and snuck it into our inventory without anybody noticing a dang thing. 1.3 mil is enough for me to see if I could get away with it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.